on a assembly line, right, which was produced on a large scale. Then slowly, a lot of advancements started taking place in the automotive field, and today automobile industry is one of the largest by revenue in the world. And then, of course, we came to what are the components of an automobile, right? We have come till here. Did we miss anything? Yeah, that's it. So, to begin with, engine, the prime mover or the power source. So, what are the different types of engines we have? SI, CI. Is there any other type of engine?
Inline, V-line.
Yeah, so even within engines, there can be several classifications. These are all IC engines, that means internal combustion engines. So the way engines can be classified is if the cylinders are arranged in, so you can classify them as single cylinder or multi-cylinder, right? So in multi-cylinder, you can have inline or inline arrangement or V arrangement or horizontally opposed, vertically opposed, or rotary. The cylinders can be arranged in a rotary manner also. I mean to say in a circular manner, right? So you can have several different classifications of engines as well. Then what are the types? If you go for, have you heard of the term HCCI? Did you study IC engines in third 3.1 or 2.2? Is there a separate subject IC engines for you guys?
It's a prime movers of automobiles.
Prime
Prime
movers for
mover
automobiles. It was
uh,
it was taught in 3.1, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you came across any other types of engines like HCCI? You know what is HCCI engine? Anyone? I mean, have you heard of the term HCCI engine? CI means what? CI engine means what?
compression ignition.
Exactly. SI means spark ignition. Mostly petrol engines are spark ignition, and diesel engines are compression ignition. So we call mostly diesel engines are called as CI engines, compression ignition engines. So then, what is the meaning of HCCI? What is the meaning of a HCCI engine? You have not heard of the term HCCI? None of you? No, if you have not heard, say no, no problem. No,
No, sir.
okay. So HCCI engine means homogeneous charge compression ignition engine. What is the advantage of a CI engine over SI engine? In general, if you compare SI and CI engines, where do CI engines are used prominently?
Sir, fuel efficiency.
Fuel efficiency, they generate high power, right? The compression ratio can be large, correct? So fuel efficiency is better and you generate a lot of power in CI engine. But what is the advantage of SI engine? Yes.
High speed.
High speed, what else?
High speed.
Yeah, high speed, then what else?
It's more compact,
It's more compact,
less vibrations.
less vibrations. Can we have petrol in CI engine? You guys have to look at these questions. These are questions which can be asked in your, what you call, placements and so on. What will happen if I use petrol inside a CI engine? Okay, please go through. These are commonly available online. So, okay, anyway, homogeneous charge compression ignition engine is nothing but you don't have a separate fuel injector and you don't have a spark plug in HCCI engine. So in CI engine, what happens? The charge, I mean, air is sucked into the cylinder and air is compressed to a very high pressure, and then fuel is injected at high pressure into the cylinder, and then the fuel burns. There's combustion, and then the combustion gases expand the piston. Correct? That's what happens in CI engine. Whereas in SI engine, charge comes inside, which means air fuel mixture comes inside the cylinder, and then the air fuel mixture is then compressed, and then it is ignited by spark. Correct? It is ignited by spark. So, but in HCCI engine, what happens is the homogeneous charge comes inside, right? What comes inside is air fuel mixture, and then the same air fuel mixture is compressed to a very high degree, to such a degree that the charge burns just because of the compression heat itself, the temperature rise that happens due to compression. And then there are different nodes of combustion within the charge. So there is no fuel injection, there is no spark plug. There's only homogeneous charge. It is compression ignition, right? Because of compression, without any fuel injection into the system, you have different nodes in which the combustion begins, right? So that is how a HCCI engine. HCCI engine is more or less in research phase. I don't think HCCI engine has been implemented anywhere as of now. But you can read through HCCI engine. It's a lot of research is being conducted on HCCI engines as well. Okay, so that is another type of engine, and of course, then you have now electric vehicles where batteries are used, and then motors are used for transmission of power from battery to the wheels. What type of battery is used in electric vehicles? Anyone knows? Mostly nowadays, what are the batteries that are used in electric vehicles?
Lithium ion.
Lithium ion batteries. Why lithium ion batteries are used?
Rechargeable.
Many batteries are rechargeable. Why lithium ion?
Small in size.
Small in size. What else? Actually, battery of automobile is quite heavy because you need very high capacity for running an automobile. That's okay, but what's one prominent feature or promising feature of lithium-ion battery because of which it is used in
Power.
electric vehicles? Yes,
They have high power, sir, like high power compared to the weight.
high power.
Power
They can be charged very quickly. They can be charged very quickly, and discharge can happen over a long period of time. So their charge discharge cycle is very effective. Charge discharge cycle, right? That is one main feature of lithium ion battery. And then multiple times you can do them without affecting them much, right? So these are certain features of lithium ion batteries which enable them to be used in electric vehicles. Many other applications, all mobile phones, laptops, most of them they use lithium ion batteries. Almost you can say all of them, right? So anyway, so if we get into prime movers, there are a lot of details. There is a separate chapter on prime movers. We'll discuss that. I'm just giving you an overview of all that. And of course, then we have why do we go for inline and V arrangement and so on? Why should we have multi-cylinder engine at all? Why should we have multi-cylinder engine?
Continuous power transmission.
Yeah, very good. Continuous power transmission. How continuous power transmission? Can you explain?
I mean, only in V6 engine, only two of the cylinders will work, and two of the cylinders will give power, and other cylinders will go in exhaust in that way.
No. What's the difference? Okay, so if you have a single cylinder, for every four rotation or every four movement of the piston, you have only one power stroke, correct?
Yes.
But then when you have multiple cylinders, so every cylinder will have power stroke alternately, so you will get continuous power output, right? So that is called as power balancing. That's called as power balancing. Because you are balancing the power and you are able to get continuous power, and there is power overlap that will give you smooth power output from the engine, right? What's the other advantage of using multiple cylinders? There are several advantages using multiple cylinders. In IC engines, you must have come across this. Why do we go for a multi-cylinder engine? It's very important because when you are having a high capacity, let's say 1000 cc, if you have 1000 cc single cylinder, what is cc? What is cc?
Volume of the cylinder.
cylinder.
Yeah, what is cc? What does cc stands for?
Cubic centimeter.
Cubic
Cubic
capacity.
centimeter.
Cubic centimeter or cubic capacity. That's true. So cubic capacity of the engine. So now, if you have 1000 cc single cylinder, what will happen? Can you have a single cylinder with 1000 cc capacity? Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. It's not impossible. But what? Let's say I have single cylinder with 1000 cc and four cylinders with 250 cc each. Both are of same cubic capacity, right?
Yes, sir.
A single cylinder with 1000 cc and four cylinders with 250 cc each. Both are of same capacity. What's the difference between these two?
Space taken by
No,
the cylinder.
not really. Yeah, you can say space. What else?
So a single cylinder will require higher pressure.
Yeah, one thing already one of you told, it's about power balance. So in single cylinder 1000 cc, you will have only one power stroke for every four strokes of the piston, right? There is compression, there is suction, there is compression, then there is power stroke, and then exhaust stroke. In expansion stroke, you get power. And then the remaining three strokes of the piston, there is no power. There is again only one power stroke and remaining three strokes. There is no power. But when you divide them into four cylinders, you can have continuous power output because each cylinder will have power stroke at different times. So you'll get continuous power output. Also, the piston mass is distributed, the mass of the piston is distributed into four cylinders, and then you can do better balancing of the engine by different arrangements of the cylinder. You can either arrange them in line. If you arrange them in V, you have better balancing of the masses and so on. There is mass balance, there is power balance. So when you go for multi-cylinder engine, you get better balancing of the engine. So this is something which you have to keep in mind. Of course, the complexity will be more because you have to cool the engine. There has to be coolant ducts around the engine, and then multiple inlet intake valves and exhaust valves have to be present. And then there is a very detailed arrangement of the camshaft is required. If you have only one cylinder, all that is not there. But then you have the big disadvantage of power imbalance and mass imbalance. So, do you understand? This is the difference why we go for multi-cylinder engine for the same capacity. We'll discuss the details when we go to the chapter. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now going to the powertrain. So anything that comes in between the engine and the wheels, okay? So anything that is used to transmit the power from the engine to the wheels is called as transmission system. So you can see first from the engine, the immediate thing we have immediately after the engine is clutch. Of course, there is a crankshaft. Crankshaft is part of the engine, right? Crankshaft is part of the engine. From the crankshaft, the power comes out to the clutch or a torque converter. We will study about torque converter later on. It comes to the clutch. What is the clutch? What does a clutch do?
It engages and disengages the power transmission.
It engages and disengages the power transmission, correct? So it connects the engine to the gearbox. So clutch comes in between the gearbox and the engine, right? Clutch is just in between the gearbox and the engine. So the transmission that is written here, for example, Yeah, you see, the green colored one is engine, the yellow colored one is clutch, and the blue colored one is written as transmission. Correct? What is this transmission? Transmission is nothing but gearbox. Transmission is nothing but gearbox. So, clutch comes exactly in between the engine and the gearbox. So, it connects the engine to the gearbox or disconnects it from the gearbox. Right? Why a clutch is required? Why should you connect or disconnect?
While changing gears,
Hmm. By changing gears, what happens? You're right. It's correct. While changing gears, what happens?
For smooth transition.
For smooth transmission, yeah. Because the engine is at a very high speed, and when you try to shift gears at that high speed, the gear wheels can get damaged, right? And there will not be smooth transmission of power. But then, how does it happen in a automatic transmission? That we will discuss later on. But in manual transmission, you do need clutch. There are several other functions of the clutch which will also be discussed later on. But primarily, the clutch is used for engaging the engine to the transmission system or disengaging the engine from the transmission system. So then we go to the transmission system. The transmission system is basically, we call it as a gearbox. In local terms, it's called as a gearbox. What is there in a gearbox? What is there inside a gearbox? Yes. What's there inside a gearbox?
Sets of gears, sir.
Sets of gears. What will they do? Why do you need a gearbox? Yes.
To
To get
increase the
various
torque.
speeds.
To get various speeds and
Torque.
torque. Very important. To get various speeds and torque. Sometimes the load is high, you need high torque. That's why, have you seen, many of you must have traveled to mountains by cars or van or something like that, right? You guys must have done that. You can raise your hands if you have gone to mountainous terrains in a car or a bus. Yeah, quite a few of you. So many of you have done that. Have you noticed what the driver does when there is a uphill? He goes to which
He
gear?
first
the
gear, I
gears.
guess, sir.
He
Means
goes to
lower.
lower gears, first or second gear. What's the reason? Because you need more torque. When you want to climb uphill, so there is a lot of load, right? You have to take the load and the vehicle has to climb uphill. So you need more torque on the wheels. So you go to lower gears, first or second gear. The first gear essentially gives very high torque. So you go to second gear, slightly lower torque, higher speed. Third gear, slightly lower torque, further higher speed. So like that, the torque reduces and the speed increases as you go to higher and higher gears. Very simple. When the vehicle is stationary, you have high inertia, right? Initially, when you want to move the vehicle, the entire weight of the vehicle, there's a lot of inertia. When you want to move the vehicle, you need a lot of torque to move the vehicle. So lower gears, you have higher torque. So the first gear provides you greater torque. And slowly the torque is reduced and the speed is increased. So second, third, fourth gear and so on. So that's why the gearbox has different combinations of gear wheels with different diameters and gear teeth and so on with different gear ratios. What it does is it enables you to choose between torque and speed. You can vary the torque and the speed based on the load requirement or speed requirement. Right? So we'll discuss about automatic transmission system, how that works, and also there is something called as CVT. What is CVT? Have you heard of a term called CVT?
Continuously
Continuous
variable
variable
transmission.
transmission.
Continuously variable transmission. Yes. CVT is also another very interesting, technology, which are used mostly in these automatic scooters and so on. You have this Activa or TVS Jupiter. So many scooters are there, right? All these scooters use CVT, continuously variable transmission. They don't have any clutch or gear changing mechanism, but still you get different torques and different speeds at based on your requirement. How that happens? You have a CVT. So that also we'll discuss when we go to transmission system. And then we have, the red colored ones are drive shaft We'll also discuss about the propeller shaft, and then there'll be axle and shafts that connect the power coming from the gearbox to the wheels. And this orange colored one is called as the differential. It's a very, very interesting mechanism. We will discuss about differential. The differential splits the power to the two wheels, and also it enables the wheels to turn in different RPMs when you take a turn. One of the most interesting mechanisms that I would say it's extremely complex, but I don't know how someone would come up with such a genius mechanism for splitting the power between two wheels based on the resistance experienced by one wheel. Okay, so that is also part of transmission system. So we'll discuss about the differential, and we'll discuss about different axles and propeller shaft. Have you guys seen a propeller shaft? It's a very common sight, propeller shaft. Where have you seen a propeller shaft, if at all you have seen?
In
Trucks.
lorries.
Lorries,
Big-
sir.
It's trucks. The bottom, if you see when a truck goes, at the bottom you will see that there is a shaft that's rotating, right? It's nothing but a propeller shaft. The propeller shaft does, it connects the gearbox to the differential. Okay. Basically, it transmits power from the gearbox to the differential. But have you seen that the propeller shaft is rotating at such a high RPM? Have you seen that? Even though the truck may be moving at a low RPM, the propeller shaft is rotating at a high RPM. Have you seen that?
Yes, sir.
Why so? How come the propeller shaft is rotating at a high RPM whereas the wheels are rotating very slowly? How is that possible? Have you thought about it? Think about it. So next time you see a truck, you see the propeller shaft will be rotating at a very high RPM. I think we have seen that the propeller shaft rotates at a high RPM, whereas the wheels are not rotating at that high RPM. They are rotating at a very low RPM. So think about it. Okay. So we'll discuss about propeller shaft and different types of drives. There is something called as open type Hotchkiss drive, and then there is a torque tube drive. So you can see in this diagram on the right side, I've written as a torque tube, right? Can you see torque tube?
Yes, sir.
So there are different types of drives, Hotchkiss drive and torque tube drive. We will also discuss that in the, I think that will come as part of the suspension system, but in any case, we will discuss all that. Okay, next moving on to suspension systems. So suspension systems, the basic functionality of a suspension system is to absorb the shock of the tires and wheels to give you a better ride. But there is more than just that the suspension system does. What else the suspension system does? Can you say? What else the suspension system does? Some of you are working on,
It maintains the wheel position.
yes? What it
It
does?
maintains the wheel position. I mean, maintains the wheel position. I mean, the tilting and
So it takes up side thrust. That's called as side thrust.
okay.
It takes up the side thrust. It takes up the torque. It absorbs the torque reaction. What else? It also maintains traction. I think I spoke about traction, right, in the last class.
Yes, sir.
So traction means the wheels should be pressed hard against the road surface. So you see, suspension system is very complicated because on one hand, you want the suspension system to be very soft. Why do you want the spring to be soft?
To avoid impacts to the I mean, like
So that it
sitting
can
channel.
absorb the vibration. A soft spring has better vibration absorption capability, correct? Low, if you have low stiffness, it can absorb the shocks, the vibrations better. But then if you have a soft spring, what is the problem?
Low
Maybe
traction.
strength of it.
Low traction, exactly. Because the wheels will always keep bumping up, and then you will have very poor traction on the road. So these are, contradictory requirements of a suspension system. The suspension system should provide better traction for the wheel on the road. At the same time, it should also absorb the shock very effectively. So these are quite contradictory requirements of a suspension system, correct? On one hand, stiffness should be low. On the other hand, stiffness should be high. So that is why design of suspension system is a very, very complicated area. It's one of the most complicated areas in a automobile. Many of the advanced vehicles have very good suspension systems. They have spent, suspension system is a combination of spring, mass, damper, and several other components. So when we discuss suspension system, we will see that there is anti-roll bar, there is a sway bar. You can see all that. So a suspension system has a lot of details to it. We will study some of them. We will not get into the design of suspension systems, but we will study some of the details of the suspension systems. And then there's something called as dependent suspension system and then independent suspension system. How many of you have heard of dependent and independent suspension systems? What do you mean by an independent suspension system?
There's no shaft connecting both the wheels.
There's no shaft connecting both the wheels, correct? So what's the advantage of an independent suspension system?
If one wheel goes over the bump, the other wheel stays where it is.
So you get better traction. So one wheel goes over the bump. So I think some of you are working on Baha, right? All-terrain vehicle. Is there anyone who is working on Baha here? What's the type of suspension system you use? Dependent or independent?
Independent, sir.
Independent. So for all-terrain vehicle, they use independent suspension. But there is a disadvantage of an independent suspension system. What is it? What is that? Okay, that is left as quiz. You guys go and find out what is the disadvantage of independent suspension system. Okay. Also, I'll give you another homework. These homeworks are not for you to submit, but for you to think about. If you are interested, you can go through. It will help you. There is something called as sprung mass and unsprung mass when it comes to an automobile. What is the meaning of sprung mass and unsprung mass? Has anyone heard of these terms, sprung mass and unsprung mass? This also will be discussed when we discuss suspension system chapter. We will discuss about sprung mass and unsprung mass and which should be high, which should be low. All that we will discuss. So there are a lot of details, quite interesting chapter. So the chapter on suspension system, all the chapters are pretty interesting. Okay. So these are the details that we will discuss in suspension system. Then steering system, right? Steering system is to control the direction of movement of the vehicle. It's to control the direction of movement of the vehicle. So you have manual steering and power steering, right? There's power steering and there is simple manual steering. So what's the difference between a regular steering and a power steering? What happens in the power steering? Why is it that a driver has to provide less effort in power steering?
Fluid is used.
Fluid is used. What the fluid does? What's the function of the steering wheel? And what's the function of the fluid? So in power steering, we usually call as power assisted steering, PAS, or power steering. So the steering is still connected to the wheels through the shafts. But then what happens is when you rotate the steering, it also enables fluid to flow from a reservoir to the shafts. So the fluid helps in pushing the shafts to left and right side. There is a pump which pumps the fluid and there is a cylinder piston arrangement. So when you rotate the steering wheel, the valves to the different sides of the cylinders are opened up. If you rotate it to the left side, then the valves to the right side of the piston are opened up and the fluid comes and pushes the fluid from the right side, turning the wheels to the left side. So when you turn it to the right side, the opposite happens. So more than your physical effort, the fluid assists you in turning the wheels, left or right. So that's why you feel less effort in turning the uh, steering wheels in power steering. So this is fluid power. Sometimes electronic power assisted steerings are also there. So we will discuss all those details, how these power assisted steering works. So there is one important feature of steering that is called as what do you call? So when you what's one what do you call how to put it? There is one danger in power steering. Can someone think of what is the danger in power steering? So you have to put very less effort in turning the wheels. That is clear, right? In power steering, you don't feel
At
the
high speed, at high speed,
ah,
it may not have any stability while
yes,
turning.
very good, excellent. Why in high speed it may not have any stability?
Even a small tilt may topple the entire
Yes,
vehicle.
very good. But how in manual steering that is avoided? You say in power steering, even a small tilt may, disturb the stability. How in manual steering that is avoided?
Mm,
How? Hmm? You are correct. So when let's say we are going at a very high speed, if suddenly you turn the wheels, what happens? The vehicle can roll over, lose stability and roll over. But that's not so easy in manual steering. You can still do that, but that's not so easy in manual steering. Think about it. What's the difference? But then power steering, it takes care of that also. It takes care of that also. Okay. So these are few features that you have to take care of in the power steering. And there are certain differences in techniques. And then how do the wheels turn? There is also steering geometry. We'll discuss about center point steering, and we'll discuss about
Ackerman,
yes, Ackerman, and there is one more, which are there are many others, but two are common: Ackerman and what else? Ackerman steering mechanism is most commonly used.
non-Ackerman.
No, it's called as a Davis steering gear. We'll discuss about Ackerman steering mechanism and Davis steering mechanism. I don't know about other things. We have to look into them. But both of them, Ackerman steering mechanism, steering geometry, and Davis steering geometry, the basic principle is that all the wheels should always maintain a frictional rolling contact with the surface and never they should slip on the surface. When you're turning the vehicle, the tires should not slip on the surface. Rather, they should always maintain a frictional rolling contact. I mean, that's not always almost possible. Some slip will always be there, but as far as possible, you should maintain a frictional rolling contact. Otherwise, the vehicle will slip and you will lose stability, right? So these details, there is a certain geometry. We will discuss those details as well when it comes to steering system. So a lot of details, and then there are three important angles when it comes to wheels, wheel alignment. What are the three wheel alignment angles?
Caster camber too.
Caster, camber, and toe. So caster angle has to do with the steering. Camber, I mean, all three are related with respect to the steering only. So, so these three anyway. I don't want to get into the details of these three angles. So we'll discuss about caster angle, camber angle, and toe angle. So I'm sure all of you are aware of the wheel alignment part. If you must have heard, check the wheel alignment. They say that very frequently when you take your car to the garage for servicing, or at least if you had seen people taking the car to the garage, they say wheel alignment has to be done, right? What is this wheel alignment? These three angles are adjusted basically: caster, camber, and toe angle. So, what's the significance of these angles? Why they are used? So, all that will also be discussed in steering system, the chapter on steering system. Okay. Then braking system, very important. We have what are the two common types of brakes? Disc brake and drum brake. I don't know. Have people come up with any other type of brakes apart from disc and drum brake? Do any of you know?
Hydraulic.
No, hydraulic is the way
Hydraulic
you
part of
transmit
the.
power from the pedal to the brake. But the braking mechanism itself, I'm asking about. You have either disc brake or drum brake. Any other brakes? Or one of you can develop something, If there are no other types of brakes, you can think of a different type of braking mechanism altogether. It will be interesting. I don't know, at least I have not come across. Or you can do some research to find out what types of brakes are there. So in drum brake, there is a drum, and how the force is applied in a drum brake, in what direction the force is applied in a drum brake.
Circular,
Radial.
radial.
From
Okay.
center to the circumference, so it's radial direction the force is applied. There's an expanding brake shoe, right? So that's radial direction force is applied. In disc brake, in what direction the force is applied?
Tangential.
Tangential.
No, it's not tangential. It's axial. It is applied in the direction of the axis of rotation of the wheel. The wheel is rotating in this direction. The brake force is applied axially. So axial and radial. Drum brake applies radial friction force. Disc brake applies axial friction force. Okay. So these are the two prominently used brake types. So we'll discuss about the details, the constructional details of a disc brake, drum brake, and then there is something called as a power brake, which are used in very heavy vehicles. And then we'll also discuss about hydraulic brakes. Then we'll discuss about anti-lock braking system. You all must have heard of ABS, right? Anti-lock braking system. Have you heard of ABS? So we'll discuss about anti-lock braking system, right? So all that will be discussed in the braking system chapter. And we'll also discuss about the electrical systems, the different meters that are used, the lighting system in an automobile, the air conditioners in an automobile, and different other systems in an automobile. We will discuss them. So then also we'll discuss about the chassis and the vehicle body. So there are a lot of details in the chassis and vehicle body. The constructional details are there. So we will discuss all those details. All right. The framework, why the frame is made in a certain shape. Why should it be, usually the frame, is it a solid rod or is it a hollow rod?
Tubular rod, sir.
Tubular, it's not, yeah, it's tubular. There can be I section, it can be tubular, it can be a closed box section. Why these sections are used, what are the advantages, and all those details will also be discussed in the chassis. And then we'll also discuss about the different types of body construction. There is body on frame and there is unibody structure. Have you heard this two terms, body on frame structure and unibody structure for cars? What do you mean by a body on frame and unibody? Have you come across someone of you? Body on frame and unibody? Or integral type, they say. Okay, body on frame is, there is a separate frame like you see here. All the components are attached, the wheels, the engine, the transmission, everything is attached, and the vehicle body is mounted on top of this. That is called body on frame. Usually this type of a construction is now seen in buses and trucks or off-road vehicles, mini trucks and so on. But when it comes to passenger cars, there is no separate frame and body. The body itself acts as the frame. You don't have a separate frame and vehicle body. The vehicle body itself acts as frame. That is called as unibody or integral type. Integral type means the frame and the body are integrated together. There is no separate body and frame. Right? So all those details also we'll discuss. What are the forces acting on the vehicle body? What are the forces acting on the frame? How do they calculate those reactions? Some simple details we will look at. Okay. Yeah, that brings us to the end of this. Any questions you guys have on this? Any questions? Meanwhile, please key in your attendance. Please key in your attendance, all of you, in the chat box.
So will we be studying about the safety system as well?
You mean airbags and I can discuss about the crash testing methods if you want. What are the different crash testing methods? But safety systems I may have to include separately. So far, I didn't discuss it explicitly. Maybe I can include that as well. Anything else? Any other question you guys have?
Sir, will center of mass affect the velocity of the car, sir?
It will not affect the velocity, it will affect the stability. It will affect the stability of the vehicle. If the center of mass is not low enough, the vehicle can roll over. So you will not have a better stability. In that sense, you can say it affects the velocity because you can't go at very high velocity when the center of mass is higher. It will not give you stability for the vehicle. So that's why very high speed vehicles, they will try to bring the center of mass as low as possible. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Any other questions? Subhash? Subhash has raised his hand. Is it a mistake or you want to ask a question? Yes? Any questions? Am I still audible?
Yes, sir, audible.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Sir, is sprung mass means the weight that acts on the spring above.
Yeah, the spring, the weight which is above the spring, above the suspension system is called as sprung mass. That which is below is called as unsprung mass. You're right. Vedakaran Reddy, you are keying in your attendance now. I don't know. I think half of you will just turn on and sleep. You have to be attentive. Otherwise, you will not benefit from these classes. You can look at the recordings, but just recordings alone will not help you. Any other questions anyone has? No, none of these attendances that are being keyed in now will be recorded. You guys are simply coming and entering the attendance so late.
Sir, HEVs generally have two or more power sources, sir. Or
SUVs?
HEV, sir, hybrid electric vehicles.
Hybrid means there are two power sources. One is the battery, and the other one is the engine itself. They have two. Yes, you are right. And they can have more also. Anything else? Okay, if there are no questions, thank you guys. Can leave now. Thank you so much. See you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.